Cool. We are live, and we are here on episode 11, I believe, with Patrick Rhodes at Fullintel. Is that
That's
the right?
correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
nice. Okay, so Patrick, I'm going to let you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Okay. Happy to. I am an enterprise sales manager at Fullintel, so sort of manage our teams across our SDR groups, and then also account executives, and also definitely get my hands dirty as well with some direct sales. Um, who am I? Born and raised in Ottawa. Now live in Calgary. Enjoying the mountains. Going to Stampede this weekend. Lover of basketball, backcountry skiing, docu-series. I'd say those are my interests. And then professionally, it's Fullintel. I've been basically our most veteran employee. I've been with the company for about 5 years now. We're a startup out of Boston and Ottawa, and we provide analyst-curated media monitoring. So the media monitoring industry is sort of a little tiny vein within the world of business intelligence SaaS that serves media and communications professionals. And so, I've managed sort of our, outbound sales efforts and try to, hunt down new logos.
Nice.
So
I
I
love
do.
it. Okay, so the headquarters for this company is in Boston. Is that what you just
That's
said?
correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's right. Or in Cambridge, Mass, basically right across the bay from Boston. But yeah, pretty much right there.
Okay, and you're working out of Calgary.
That's correct.
Do you find it difficult managing a team completely remotely like this?
It is really interesting. I don't know if it's difficult as much as it's just a different beast, and I'm just learning, like really trying to find new and creative ways to get it done. We have recently implemented a new tool set, outreach.io, which is a really intuitive sort of, CRM slash sort of outbound sales management product that allows us to kind of like send campaigns, and it's got really good reporting on activities. I'm actually able to listen in on people's calls. So we're trying to find new and creative ways to kind of do that effectively. I mean, it really comes down to just trying to have, as little calls as necessary, but still enough where we can really, help our guys and stay connected and make sure that people feel like they're part of a team. Like bizarre hiring people during the pandemic, which happened, who I've never met in person. Like weird. But yeah, anyway, trying to find different, I guess, tool sets that help me do that more effectively, and ways to sort of still have people feel connected without it being like weird.
Right. Okay, cool. And how many people are on your team right now?
So we've got 4 SDRs full time. We've got 3 account managers, myself. So I would say, let's say like, less than 10 in terms of our sort of sales and account management.
Okay. And so when you're working with this team, like how does the discovery process work on this team? Are your SDRs doing the heavy lifting in terms of qualifying and all that stuff?
Yeah, so well, they're definitely doing the heavy lifting in terms of bringing people in the door. The qualifying, might happen as part of their efforts, or it might happen on the first call when the sales rep is involved. We try to qualify as much as we can before obviously getting to the table and make sure it's a good use of our time as well as theirs. But with the way that we curate our lists and the way that we manage leads, we pretty much know that if we could book a meeting with these companies, it's at least worth a 30-minute call, because we're reaching out to people with the right titles, with the right amount of revenue, the right sector. So we do a lot of sort of high quality lead gen to start, and that's a heavy lift. We've got a database of like probably 55,000 research contacts in our industry that we built over the last 5 years. So they do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of running outbound sequences. So like, emails, calls, LinkedIn, a variety of different touch points, like multi-touch point campaigns. And then there's sort of different levels of that. So we'll do sort of like high volume ones. We'll do more sort of pinpointed deep dives. So yeah, they do the heavy lifting of kind of bringing people through the door. And then hopefully they can do a little bit of qualifying as part of that. But if not, then it really happens through some pretty intensive Q&A on the first call. Discovery call, see if it's worth our time, see if we're on the same page. If it is, then book more of a sort of proper solutions demo and really kind of sink our teeth in.
Cool.
I'm sure that does not sound super unique compared to everybody else you talk to.
It is interesting though, because like I'm sort of in the process right now of training my first recruiter to work on my team.
Okay.
And so
Yep.
I'm really curious, like how do you teach people, the right people to reach out to and how to qualify them properly and all of that fun stuff?
Yeah, well, you're teeing me up nicely in terms of the qualification part, because I know we've chatted about that briefly in the past. But in terms of reaching out to the right people, for us it's pretty easy. We sell software and services that are really only necessary for media relations, communications, public relations people. We help them monitor their brand as it's portrayed in social media and in the news. So like literally like journalists writing about people, articles, TV stories, radio. And so that really aligns or is relevant to a pretty narrow division of any company. So, it's media relations, it's comms, PR. We use Zoom Info, we use LinkedIn, we use a couple other like database tools to do the lead gen to kind of make sure we have our lists ready. And then in terms of qualifying, going back to the basics here, I think you know what I'm going to say. BANT, BANT, baby.
That's what I wanted you to say.
Can't beat it. You're giving me a low-hand pitch. Yeah, BANT. I mean, it's so cheesy. People are rolling their eyes listening to this right now. But budget, authority, need, timeline, and then sort of as part of, let's say, the need, levels of pain, and what value are we going to provide? Hopefully, there's a number of different value props, and obviously those are different with reference to the person that you're serving. So if you're pitching someone at a maybe say an entry level position, or for us it's like the communications specialist, maybe the communications manager, they've got a different pain point than perhaps their boss or the director or the VP. For them, it's like, let's make your job easier. Let's make your day easier. For their boss, it might be like, let's save them salary time. Let's give you the freedom to put them on other projects. So we'll qualify them really closely and really sort of consultatively, really spend a lot of time up front. And as a result, hopefully know if you're going to close a deal within that first 30-minute call. And then you're not wasting cycles. You're not doing the whole dog and pony show if they don't have budget, if you're not talking to the person with the right authority, if they don't have the need, if they're not going to try to procure within a reasonable timeline. I know it's sort of like it's painfully sort of cliche and it's very sort of basic, but it actually saves a ton of time.
I mean, if it's effective, like you don't need to fix it, right?
Right. I think I've got an appointment later to get BANT tattooed on my knuckles. So stay tuned for that. But I mean, I've even reflected in our pipeline, like our sales on Salesforce, we have literal qualifiers that you have to fill out as a salesperson before you can move and opt to the next stage in the pipeline. So before you can actually progress something down the funnel, you're filling out BANT. And I've actually implemented boxes where you've got to punch that in. And then if I'm looking at the life cycle of a deal and I see it slowing down, or we see that something isn't really progressing the way it should, and there's good activity, it's like, okay, you're doing your job, but what's wrong here? What isn't being accomplished in those conversations? And we can kind of look through those qualifiers and be like, well, look, man, you don't have the budget, or hey, you need to really get through to that authority figure. It seems like that's holding you up right now. Yeah, textbook stuff, and just like makes so much of a difference versus like spraying and praying and just giving everybody a big blanket pitch and effectively wasting your time at the end of the day.
Right, that makes sense. Okay. So while reps are going through this qualification process and discovery calls and all that fun stuff, what are some objections that your typical clients might throw your way?
I guess I guess this, if we're looking at sort of like an execution percentage, and you look at the percent that didn't execute or that didn't turn into a deal, I don't know if this is an objection as much as it's sort of just a pain in the ass, but as someone who sells SaaS, I'm sure other people can relate. You get a lot of people that are just trying to check out the product. Like they're just trying to really, they're taking a demo, just kind of check it out.
Right.
And they're not actually there, like they're not qualified, right? There's no opportunity on the table. It's like, I just want to learn more. So that is a big time suck. And that's when it's really good to qualify ahead of time. But even then, you can't read someone's mind, and they might say, oh yeah, I'm really interested. I've got a project in mind. I would say like 9 out of 10 times, if it's like a no or if it's not a fit, it's just because they were probably actually not engaged with the mind to actually procure, more or less wanting to, learn more about the product. And there's value in that. You add them to your CRM, you nurture them, you stay in touch with them because they've expressed interest, and maybe you turn that into something later. But on a high level, that's the biggest pain in the ass, I would say. But in terms of like objections, I think the authority thing in BANT is sort of a common one. So
Hmm.
like not necessarily an objection again, but more of like a roadblock. Where if you're selling SaaS, you could probably get the idea that like maybe the decision maker says, hey, go to their specialist, one of their associates is like, hey, go check out this tool, report back to me. That happens a lot too. So maybe there is an opportunity there, but you really got to kind of sift through the weeds and sort of dig it out. So I would say a lot of times those are the problems. If we're talking to the right person, if they're not just trying to check out the tool, they actually have a need, then it's usually pretty smooth sailing. But we do spend a lot of cycles kind of doing those like get to know you calls when there might not be a real sort of like fish on the hook.
Right. Okay. Fair. And just because I know that you guys are in Ottawa and Boston, so do you primarily sell to American customers or Canadian customers?
Primarily US. We like our product for us. It comes down to like what kind of intelligence can we provide, and we can easily report on the US as well in terms of media coverage and social media and that kind of thing. For us, from a product standpoint, it comes down to content licensing. So where are we licensing content? Where can we effectively, deliver a good product? What markets can we track effectively? So we can do the US, and so it's like, all right, we're going to focus on the US. Obviously, just in terms of the number of companies, the number of leads. This is kind of getting granular from a salesy perspective, but there's also consideration in terms of can spam and sort of effectively what you can do from an outreach perspective in the US versus Canada. A little bit more of the wild, wild west down south where you can, feel a little bit more secure in your cold outreach versus perhaps really making sure you're respecting laws in Canada from a sort of cold outreach perspective. I don't know, it's a nuance that's definitely worth considering at scale. But I would just say, like, at the end of the day, budgets down south.
Yeah, fair enough. I've also heard that the sales process, or I guess the way that you interact with customers, is very different into the States. And I've never sold into the States, so I don't know this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's more of a sort of like I'm not gonna. Sorry, my headset just cut out. Did
Yeah,
you
I
still
just
got
lost
me?
you for a second.
I don't know. I think there's sort of an open culture of business, a more sort of liberal culture when it comes to business and when it comes to sort of like capitalism on a high level. I think a good example is like, if you are in Canada and you're an entrepreneur and you've had a couple failed business attempts, it's sometimes people will like scoff at you. They're like, oh, like, this guy's a failure, or like, oh, really? Like his business like fell apart. If you have 3 failed business attempts and you're in the States and you're talking about it, it's like, okay, cool, this guy's an entrepreneur. Like he's gonna go get the next one. There's sort of like an open, more liberal culture around business. And so I have found sometimes that yes, people are sort of more willing to kind of like, all right, give me your pitch. Um, that said, it also does definitely vary on who you're calling to from like an industry standpoint and also regionally. Um, like my guys are stoked when they can call the CST time zone because you just get like the southern charm and a lot of friendly people versus cold calling like finance in New York when people hang up on you. So yeah, I think there's sort of like a DMA thing there as well.
Fair enough. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that. That's interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's like nothing better than calling like oil and gas people. They'll just like put their feet up on the desk and like shoot the shit with you. Little bit more fun than otherwise.
Which is nice, but I mean, eventually, at some point, shooting the shit, you're like, okay, I gotta like wrap
Well,
this
then you
up.
got to go bant. Then you got to figure it out. Yeah, cut through the noise. But yeah.
Cool. So maybe this is not for your perspective specifically, or maybe you would want to go that with that. But what do you think is the most useful sales tool for either you or your team?
I would say right now it's outreach.io. We used to use Yesware. Does that name ring a bell?
I don't know. Yes, where?
It's basically outbound email marketing tools that allow
Okay.
you to automate touch point cadences. So you can send, multiple sales emails automated to go out within a certain amount of time and with a specific messaging, and you can use functions to pop in their names. It's sort of more marketing than sales, but you can also layer in then other touches, other types of ways to get in touch. So like phone calls, LinkedIn, and so it'll pop up your tasks for you. And so from a sort of like activity perspective, because at the end of the day, like that's what it comes down to for SDRs, it's activity. It's like you're going to try and book X amount of demos, how many phone calls you have to make to get there, how many emails you have to send to get there. These types of sort of like automated outbound sales tools are just like hugely impactful. If you were to look at the sort of the ROI with a sort of simple calculation of like how many deals did we do last year via those emails or via those calls as they were organized on that tool. It's staggering. So yeah, I would say a really intelligent tool like Outreach.io. It has two-way communication with Salesforce as well, which is awesome. Okay. So not only can you pull your lead lists and your data from Salesforce, but it's also going to tag and ping back to Salesforce. So someone unsubscribes, that gets tagged on Salesforce. Someone is, the email bounces, that gets tagged as well. So it actually does some like data cleanup for you that kind of removes some of the plumbing, the manual plumbing that's required when you're using a one-way API tool versus like an Outreach, which kind of like it's like a little like digital robot almost, like really does a lot for you.
Nice.
So I'd say Outreach, man. If any company can afford it, I'd say it's worth its weight in gold.
And so with that kind of automation, do you still have the chance to like kind of personalize your outreach?
Yeah, so you do for sure. So and this is totally sidetracking here, but like, when you have like a word in your family and you always thought that it was a real word, and then you talk to someone else, you're like, dude, that's like a made up word that your family that's like, I've got a couple of those, so I'm about to use some, but like we kind of divide our campaigns as vertical campaigns and cluster campaigns. Vertical campaigns are the really sort of large spray and pray ones where it's like, let's reach out to pharma and just have some messaging that's unique. They're relevant to just pharma, not hugely customized to the individual and to the company. We kind of keep that running in the background. It's a machine and it produces demos. But then the real sort of deep selling, the phone calls, the LinkedIn, that occurs on what we would call sort of more cluster campaigns, which are like small pockets of companies who you can tailor messaging to uniquely. So maybe you're like, okay, I'm going to go at like, we work with Goodyear. I'm going to go with the tire and rubber cluster. I'm going to have some messaging that's just unique to them. I might even jump in and tailor my messaging so that Michelin tire receives a unique campaign just for them, talking about some news around Michelin. So yeah, you can do that on Outreach. And you can set it up so that it kind of reminds you. So it's like, hey, you have to customize these emails for these people today. So it's usually a bit of a combo of both. Yeah, it's really neat. Like I could talk all day about this, so like tell me to shut up if I need to. But the really cool thing is also how to prioritize your phone calls. So it also will populate a call task based on certain levels of engagement. So you could say, okay, if somebody opens my email 3 times and also clicks a link, produce a call task.
Oh, it'll like prioritize
not for everybody, them. Right? It kind of helps you triage, so that when you then go to make a call, you're calling somebody who's been warmed up via those emails. They've read your pitch. That they've clicked a link. They might have looked at a brochure. You're calling that guy, versus having a call touch for every person you're reaching out to, and then you're managing a list of people like 2,000 people, and you're not going to call 2,000 people. So we can say, let's just crank it up so that it's only the people with like super high engagement, and then that's who we call.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a really effective tool. Kyle Adam is the head of account management at Fullintel, and like we fanboy over this like day and night. We're just like talking about this product. We're super excited about it. It's like we're like K-pop fans or something.
And how long have you been using this? Like I'm surprised that we didn't mention this before when I had a chat with you.
Right. So I'm in the romantic stage of the relationship. We just started with this product like a month ago. I've been using Yesware for 5 years, which also has a lot of the same functionality, but not the same intelligence. Not like the two-way API thing. Not the populating call tasks based on engagement. So I'm sort of in the phase where I'm like, kissing and holding hands with this new girlfriend constantly, and like don't want to like stop talking about her.
I love it. Why do you think you like got interested in sales? Because you've now been with Fullintel for like 5 years. So like, what keeps the sales like dream alive for you?
Yeah, totally. I did sociology in university. I was literally a teacher's assistant at Soc, just like over here compared to like where I am now. I've always just been like a really energetic person. I think I have like a lot of passion, and I just think that like if you're sort of bursting with energy and you've kind of got that like twitch, I think sales really ties in. Very social, and really I like the risk of it. I kind of like the feel. A lot of people don't like this, but I like the kind of when you're walking on a knife's edge. It's constantly trying to keep your head above water. But then when you have those big wins, it's huge and it's like a big celebration, and you're doing something for the bottom line. So I think that kind of like thrill of the chase, and just like I don't know, I love it, man. I think it just ties into like my personality, and there's a certain type of person that likes, I guess, every type of job, and for me, it's just like the thrill of the hunt.
Cool. Yeah, I don't see a lot of people come out of sociology and get into sales, so good for you.
Yeah. But like the crossovers would be that like I wrote a lot of essays, so I did a lot of sort of like pitching, I guess, like our presentations, um, communications, that kind of thing. Having to be a sort of a critical thinker. I don't know. I could wax on for a while, but there's not a ton of crossover. It's just sort of what I did, and then like knew I wanted to get into business, and tech sales was the way to go.
I could wax on for a while. I haven't heard that term before. I like it.
Yeah. You'll get a lot of that. To that question though, Jeremy, I did a session with a career counselor when I was in university because I had no clue what I wanted to do, and just did all these like Q&As and all these little tile cards and like all these little sort of like ways to kind of drill down and find out what I want to do and what I'd be good at. And she came up with two jobs at the end of it. I can't remember if I told you this last time we chatted. One of them was to be a farmer, like an agricultural farmer.
Oh, you did tell me this, yeah.
Yeah. And the other was tech sales. I was like, what the hell? But it's like, it makes sense. You're autonomous. You got to hit a target. You make your own day. The idea is you got to yield something, right? You got to yield a product or crop. And so I went the sort of like digital route, but I can see how that would have crossed over. And like, maybe when I retire, I'll farm.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it seems like a pretty good thing to do. I have some tomato plants that are actually growing tomatoes in my backyard this year. So there we
Wow,
go.
nice. Congrats.
They didn't do anything last year. They just got really big.
Yeah. Oh, really? They're just like big, gross, like green things, or?
Yeah, they were just these giant plants that had no tomatoes on them.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. I've got an herb garden, and like we're like we've got a view of the mountains. We're really exposed. It's beautiful, but like sometimes you can't sit outside because you'll get blown away. And like the herb garden is struggling. The cilantro is no more.
Cilantro's hard, man.
Cilantro is really hard. I shouldn't have done it. Rosemary's doing well. Mint's doing well.
Yep.
Basil's hanging on by a thread.
Yeah, our basil, we had to actually replant our basil this year. It's sensitive, and so is the cilantro. So
yeah,
I'm not surprised that you're having more success with mint.
Yeah. Oh yeah, mint. It's just like he's the bully. I'm like constantly like pulling him away from the other plants.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So farming aside, when you're talking to someone about sales, what would you tell someone that's considering a sales career or getting into sales?
For sure. I think, I think on a high level, they have to be okay with the grind, because that's sort of how you cut your teeth in sales. But that's not what it is. What you're doing is you're solving problems. And when you figure that out, you become successful. When you really figure out, like, you're not there to like, when you think of sales, you think of some guy trying to sell you like a car, right? But really what you're trying to do is solve a problem. And again, we're going back to like the cliches. So, but I think that it's just the idea that like, if you're someone that likes, let's say like the puzzle, like if you like doing puzzles, or you like doing sort of like, you like the like mysteries, and you like really figuring out an answer to a question and digging into something and grinding through it to get this, to find the solution, I think that you'll love sales, because that's what it is. Yes, you have to be personable. Yes, you have to be able to like chat with people and make a relationship, but that is like 1% of it. Everyone thinks that that's what it is. That's not what it is. What it is you want to be able to consult and listen and figure out if you can solve the problem. And if you can solve the problem, then you'll be successful. So that's what I would tell people, is sort of like the stigma, like just forget about it. Every company has sales. And if you really understand what sales is at the end of the day, it's not just like, hey, buy this, crappy car. And then you really understand what the pursuit is, then you can sort of make a judgment as to whether or not it work for you.
I really like that answer. My exposure to sales, like working in sales and being around sales, was like we read Death of a Salesman, and that was it. And I was like, oh man, that's bad.
Yeah, exactly. Or like a Stephen King horror book about some guy going like door to door selling Tupperware or something. Like I remember some book as well. I was like, oh, that sounds awful. I think when you really start to realize that every single company has sales, and that it goes beyond just like, hey, look at this. I think that's when you really start to open your eyes and figure out what their career path looks like. I mean, those are all the sort of intellectual answers. You can also make a ton of money. So it's like, that's also like a pretty low hanging fruit for most people.
Yeah, fair enough. What do you think the change in mindset was for you when you went from like, reading the Stephen King book about like, that's what sales is, to like actually experiencing solution selling?
I literally, even when I was graduating university, still didn't really have an appreciation for it, and still sort of had looked at it through the sort of like upturned nose stigma of like, that's like, what is that? Is that a career? What does sales do? Um, it actually was through those conversations with that career counselor that where I really started to kind of open my eyes to it, and really sort of put some time into like researching what actually what different jobs and roles do. But it happened late. I was in my 20s, but still didn't know really what sales was, or like, the real gist of the profession.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I was like 24 before I got into like a full sales role.
Yeah, yeah, and looking back, I had done sales already. I just never really thought of it that way. Like I had been reception at a tennis club, or I had, done something going door to door or whatever, but I, never really thought of it through the transferable skills and how I was selling something. And everybody needs to sell themselves at the end of the day. And like, if you're okay wrapping your head around that, you could probably wrap your head around sales as a career as well.
Fair enough. Cool. So now that you're used to the sales grind, as you're sort of referring to it, what do you do to start your day on the right foot? How do you get there?
Yeah. Well, coffee, podcast, New York Times daily podcast. And usually I like to kind of figure out what I'm going to do before I go to bed. I kind of like, take a quick check of my calendar, really kind of mentally prep myself. Do I have a call that I should be getting up earlier for? Is there something I need to kind of like wrap my head around? But for the most part, it happens at night for me. And then I kind of like go on autopilot and then just like make it into my desk for my first meeting. But yeah, I think a lot of it is just like having a tight schedule, teeing yourself up, and just kind of like know when you kind of I'm doing using so many cheesy analogies. Oh my God. Like when an athlete visualizes something before they do it, it's sort of, that's what I'll do before. If I like look and see that I've got like 5 different pitches happening in a day, or like whatever meetings, or I'm helping people, quickly kind of visualize how that's going to go and maybe how I'm going to open that conversation, and, just kind of like do a quick practice in my head and kind of get ready for the day, and then just start, knocking them out.
Right. I like that. And when you do this kind of practice, do you do you have sort of role playing with anyone, or do you just like go through it yourself?
At this point, it's just internal, and it's probably like just, looking off into the distance and just looking like I'm talking to myself.
My
But
girlfriend asks me that all the time. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm talking to myself.
yeah,
It's fine.
yeah, exactly. Just leave me alone. Leave me alone. I'm having an argument in the shower and I'm winning. Um, uh, no, like I think when I was younger, I used to just get scared shitless. That was really the thing. Like I would just, be like, palms would be so sweaty. I'd be pacing the room before I go into a call, and then it's like the call would start, and they'd be like, okay, that'd be fine. And then I have to like change my shirt after. Um, but yeah, right now I think I'm kind of more on autopilot, but it's probably just because I've been doing this for a little while.
Right. Fair enough. Okay, cool. And so, your meeting goes well, you've closed your business, or maybe it didn't go well and you didn't get business out of it. How do you detach a little bit from like the day to day?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's actually sort of one of my faults. I think of my career as a lifestyle, and I'm constantly got my phone on me, and we serve people in different time zones, so it is kind of hard to turn the tap off. Um, I would say that's a question I have no real answer to. I don't do that well at this point. That's probably something I could do better. And I think I'm kind of at the stage of my life where I don't really, have too many responsibilities. So I'm kind of able to keep it turned on. But when I have a family and more responsibilities, I'm sure that that'll be something I'll come back to you and ask you for a better answer from someone else.
Fair enough. Take more
Yeah,
camping
seriously.
trips, Patrick.
I need to, man. Honestly. Yeah. You enjoyed your last one too, eh? It sounded fun.
Yeah, I mean the fact that it didn't have any reception and stuff, that was like awesome. Like it was just it was
Yeah.
the kind of remote that I needed, and it was only like 3 days, but it was so good.
Yeah, totally. Well, you know what? I guess you're right. Like, I guess I do. I guess one example would be when I play golf, I'll leave my phone in the car and
Yeah.
just try to like, really detach a bit. So that does happen. But, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't kind of wondering what was happening while I was playing too. So I think that is definitely something I could kind of work to like separate.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it's an interesting question, especially in this whole COVID thing, because like we have this, everyone's working from home, so the separation between work and home life is harder to balance for some people, for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. That's a really good point because you get that detachment when you're walking home from work or when you're physically separating yourself. That is an interesting point. You're kind of just completely immersed while working from home. I'm not sure what that impact will look like in the long term.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely interesting, and I mean, I'm seeing it with some of my circle right now. Like burnout is like a real thing, and people don't completely know how to address it.
Yeah, yeah. I still got gas in the tank, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool. So like, what are you? What's next for you this summer? Like, what are you? Where are you going camping?
Yeah, so next week I'm going camping here in Alberta just for a couple nights. Megan, my girlfriend, it's actually her first time going, so I'm trying to like ease into it. We're just doing some car camping in the
Nice.
mountains, nice little place in Banff. Um, what else am I doing? I'm doing a backpacking trip later this summer. I'm doing the Berg Lake Trail,
Oh wow. Okay.
which is kind of yeah. I think I've never done it before, but I think it's sort of like one of the more sort of cool, visually stunning backpacking trips in BC. So I'm looking forward to that. Other than that, playing a lot of golf and hopefully saving some vacation time to go to the U.S. once the sort of vaccination passport thing becomes a thing.
Yeah.
Um, I've I'm closer to California now than I was before, and I'd love to go visit some friends and family down there.
Fair enough. Yeah, I've been sort of keeping an eye on the states. My partner's in Portland, and I
Yeah.
went down there
Okay.
before the pandemic, and he was like, "It's a war zone here. Don't come back right
Yeah. Oh
now."
my God. Especially, dude. Especially because it was like 120 degrees recently.
Yeah.
Like they just have all sorts of emergency examples. You know what I mean? It's like protests. It's riots. It's climate disasters. A lot going on in Portland right now.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting place.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you're doing the long distance thing though. That must be kind of tough.
It's sort of interesting because like I never actually looked to set myself up with like an office and stuff. I just figured that's how it was
Yeah.
going to work. And so my
Sure.
biggest client does sells voice over IP to businesses, so I just bought into
Okay.
it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So it's
Yeah.
kind of keeping you where you are though.
Yeah, exactly. So I have this virtual office attendant and stuff. It sounds really official when you call me. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Seriously. Okay. Nice. Virtual office attendant. Like it. Nice, man. Well, hopefully you get to see your partner and sort of close that gap.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. It's been a pleasure having you on the show today, Patrick.
Thank you. I
I
appreciate
think
it.
that's pretty much everything I had to go through, but I definitely appreciate your insight today.
Yes. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And to anybody that's still listening, thank you for staying awake. I appreciate it. I'd make you roll your eyes back until they fell out. But yeah, no, thanks for your time, man. I think it's really cool. I like what you're doing, and I'm definitely going to, listen to the other participants. And good luck.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick, and I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, man.